Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I am your host, Christina Barr, and today we are going to be talking about this heartbreaking story about how a father, is being removed from a transplant patient list, apparently because he is not vaccinated. That's coming out of Boston. But the sad thing about that is there's another story that I heard that Newsmax reported about some time ago, that there's a Virginia man who was removed from the transplant list as well. So this is a disturbing trend that's going on. So I want to talk about that. Also, there's I guess, another war waging in Florida with the monoclonal antibody, the treatment that they were doing, that Florida was really, really using. And then, as you recall, then the White House was like, well, Florida has too much. We got to put a cap on it because other people need it too. And it's like Florida is using it and they need it. They're actually using it, but now you want to like limit it. And so now to the point where they're saying, well, it's not being used for COVID, really, the Omicron, it's not as effective. So the FDA is pulling emergency use for it. So now they're not going to be able to like have the access that they had. And Jen Psaki was asked about it, and it was pretty crazy, her response, because she started going off on a rant about how people were not responsible with their in positions of power. And she's like, some people said to inject bleach. I'm not inject bleach, but she said disinfect it. And they keep repeating this as if Trump told people to drink bleach or inject bleach. And the context of that is so just taken off the rails, because they want people to believe that Trump just wanted you to start guzzling bleach. And that's the appearance that they want people to have. And if you believe a caricature of Trump, I guess that's easy for some people to believe. But Jen Psaki knows better. She absolutely knows better. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the absurdity of that. So we're going to play that little snippet that she had. By the way, the whole ordeal with Peter Ducey and Joe Biden, Joe Biden did apologize. And it's so funny watching. I started posting like snippets of like Brian Stelter and stuff that he used to say regarding it. But he also was talking about it, Peter Ducey, Joe Biden calling him a stupid, SOB. And he said, well, Peter Ducey didn't go off, and he just could accept the apology because he's not like Trump. And Trump was like really going to war with these people day by day. No, that's not why. Peter Ducey isn't a crazy person. He's not like Jim Acosta, who would be like, but Jim Acosta, I think he said something like, still have marks on my back, as if he was a darn slave being whipped every day during the Trump White House. It's just really not that deep. And I understand that a lot of people in industries, especially when you get on TV all the time, that you develop some kind of massive ego. And then people were praising them because they were standing up to Trump. They're trying to hold him accountable. And they got all these praise from crazy people on the left who watched all their newscasts, who apparently aren't watching them anymore because Trump's gone. So there's not the outrage that fueled their life every day pumping into their veins. So they don't need to turn on CNN for the outrage shock culture. But Peter Ducey's not a psychopath, so he could just, accept the apology. He gets how Biden is. Biden's been around for a long time. Everyone should understand how Biden is. So he didn't take it that personally. And maybe he thinks he's just a cranky old man, and just let that be that. And I don't know what he privately thinks, but he's just, him and other people are laughing about it, like, oh, he can laugh about it because Biden's not like Trump. No. It's not that Biden's not like Trump. It's just that Ducey's not like you guys. He can take it. He's a big boy. So it's just a funny development. To me, it's funny that the story is being talked about to the level it is, but it's so much. I guess it's because so many people want to defend Biden that it is really a big story. Bigger than maybe it should have been for a hot mic second, but it wasn't appropriate. So he did, at least he apologized for what it's worth. I don't think it's worth much of all, but it's an interesting story. I guess I thought I would mention it since I don't actually have a meme of the day. But before we jump into everything, I do want to thank you guys for sharing, for liking, for watching. Messages I've been getting lately. People coming in, saying that they appreciate the show. People, dropping like, "Can you cover this? Can you talk about that?" I appreciate that people are engaged and willing to have a conversation, and appreciate that I'm here to have the conversation. So I thank you guys. Please make sure that you're following me on all my social media platforms. I know a lot of you guys like to watch on Facebook. Please go follow on YouTube and other places because it does help me out. So go ahead and follow me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, on Getter. I think I said TikTok already, but all my handles are at Black Tea News. The only one that is different is Twitter, and that one is at True Black Tea. All my links are like pretty much in the description, so you guys can click on those and like that. Make sure you drop in your email at the website. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I've written on the website. I did drop an article today. You guys know I don't normally like to talk about my religious beliefs when it comes to abortion. I like to just stick to really two big points. Is it a life scientifically? I would say yes at conception, and two, well, does it deserve the right to life? And if it's a life, I believe that it does. So that's really my two main points that I like to talk about. But there's this trend, especially on TikTok, and maybe they got it from other TikTokers or Reddit posts and stuff. But there's atheists or agnostics or whatever, angry agnostics who I guess is still atheists, but I think when you're that angry and you're an atheist, I think you believe in something. And they'll use the Bible and they'll try to, I don't know, to own the Christians and own the pro-lifers, and use the Bible to justify abortion. And then they'll normally use Numbers 5, verses 11 through something. And sometimes they'll bring up a passage in Exodus, and you have to really not understand that, I think, to get that wrong. Or they'll say that life starts at first breath because of Adam. God breathed into him. So I decided to just write an article about it. It's on the website. You guys can check that out and share it and read it. If that's something that floats your boat, because I do know there's some people who aren't maybe as versed in scripture and stuff who might get stumped. So maybe that'll help you there. I don't actually think it's entirely helpful to go that route with a lot of people. I do just want to correct the record when I get into those kind of conversations. But just a fair warning, if you are a Christian and you are having that conversation with an atheist, who usually they will bring it up. I try not to bring, I never have, my abortion arguments are God said not to have one. Those aren't my arguments. It's only helpful to have those conversations with other people who are deeply religious as you. Okay. So I don't bring that up, but if they bring it up and you bring up all these scriptures and lay out how the Bible does not condone abortion and it actually condemns it, they'll just probably say, well, I don't believe in a dumb flying spaghetti monster in the sky. And then it'll be apparent that you waste a lot of time. So just a fair warning. It's just a fair warning. And sometimes I'll just shoot back at people and say, you're for abortion because of the Bible? That's weird. Like, and they'll be like, no, I don't believe in it. So you can just kind of nip it in the bud. But it's not helpful most of the time, but there's the information. I did write something about it. I'll probably do like a podcast episode on my like religious podcast about it more in depth, but you guys can go check out that article and share it around and check out other articles as well. And please check out different merchandise that I have on the website, different shirts like the My Money, My Business shirt, got the black tea mug, the Constitution is a Glorious Liberty document, which that will be very useful. By the way, when 4th of July comes up, I know it's still cold out here, but that's a quote from the what is 4th of July to a slave speech, which a lot of people have used to try to trash 4th of July as if Douglas didn't like it. If you read that speech, it is very powerful. If you're like apprehensive to read that speech, it's a great speech. You should go read it. You should definitely go read it. And he's someone who thinks the Constitution obviously is a glorious liberty document. So that's something to keep in mind for that time of year. Also, please consider checking out different books that I've written. when I went to go to DC, I actually got to stay with to be with a friend who from high school, and so one of her kids really likes my book Super Kid and Super Kid 2. So he's a big fan of my books, and so his mom asked him what he liked about the book, and he said, "Well, it teaches you how to deal with bullies." And bullying, and to see value in yourself, even though you may not have powers, how you can still do the right thing and be special, and the power of your imagination. And she said, as he was explaining all the good things about it, she's like, "Oh wow, sounds like a really good book." So he was, I had met him before, but that was prior to like me being an author, so it was like a bigger deal. But I was like excited that someone was excited about my book, to be honest. So it was a really nice feeling. But anyway, I know some of you have gotten it for your kids and they've liked it. So if they have, I encourage you to please like leave a review on Amazon. But it is a good series with a lot of good conservative morals that you'd want to teach your kids and pass on to your kids. So that's available on Amazon. But if you go to blacktnews.com and go to the merchandise, there is a banner that will take you to my website where all the books and stuff are. So let's get into some news of the day. I'm also going to talk about Peter Dinklage and his freak out about Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. Apparently Disney has caved to his list of demands, and they are going to change Snow White and the Seven Dwarves because I guess it would be inappropriate to have dwarves. So that is an interesting story as well. But let's get into this situation with the monoclonal antibodies. I played for you guys some time ago with the UFC president Dana White talking about he was in the news and someone asked him about Joe Rogan and the podcast and the ivermectin, and he brought up the antibody treatment and said after you could have used to just get it and made a phone call and you could get it, and now that it's a big thing, it's very hard to get. And so there's some swearing in here, FYI, I just want to warn you. But I thought this was an interesting video at the time.
I was wondering what your thoughts were with the 200 plus doctors trying to put pressure on Spotify saying that Joe's a menace to...
Are they really?
Yeah.
Well, how about this? Ever since I came out and said what I did, it's almost impossible now to get monoclonal antibodies. They're like, they're making it so you can't get them. You know, medicine that absolutely works, they're keeping from us. I don't want to get too political and start getting into all this shit, but ivermectin and monoclonal antibodies have been around for a long time. Now all of a sudden you can't dig them up to save your life. The doctors won't give them to you, you know. And even when I did it here in Vegas, which was however many weeks ago that I had it, like right before Christmas, I think, or something. Yeah, I made one phone call and was able to get it done. And that's not like some fucking rich famous guy shit. Like anybody could have called and you know, because that's what everybody always throws at me. Yeah, of course you can fucking make a phone call and get it. Bullshit. Everybody could have got it back then. You know, Lene had it. Lene did monoclonal antibodies and did all that stuff. Everybody could get it. Now, you know, Rogan's been talking about it. Then I went crazy talking about it. You can't get those things to save your life now, literally.
Are you surprised at the backlash that people don't even want to allow you to discuss options and pre-treatment?
It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Yeah, it's one of the craziest things that I've ever witnessed in my life.
So I do think it's pretty interesting and pretty insane as well. So in Florida, they were using this and it was pretty effective against other stuff. But now they're saying it's not effective, or at least they're claiming it's not very effective against Omicron. So they don't want that to be the emergency use anymore. So they want to pull the availability of it. What's been going on with Florida and the war at the White House with like Ron DeSantis has been very peculiar. Because they were really using it before, and the population is very high vaxxed. They rushed out to get a lot of people vaccinated. 60 Minutes even like ran an attack piece on Ron DeSantis about his vaccination, and people were trying to make a story as if he was showing special preference to people. as to get reelected, and like a lot of his movements and plays were just political plays, other than, hey, he's the governor, he's trying to make sure that a state that has a very high population of elderly get taken care of. Common sense of the vaccine and the whole COVID movement and the pandemic should be, people should try to live their lives to the best of ability, and people who are elderly should be protected. That should have been like the two main things that like drove our lives for the past few years. And that's not what happened. Yesterday we had on the Macomb County prosecutor Pete Lucido, who was a former, well, I guess he is a former a Senate rep from Michigan, and he was very, very confounded about our treatment of seniors during the pandemic in Michigan, and I'm still baffled, and I hope there's some accountability down the line for some of our, I don't know, reasons, policies of why we did what we did in our state and in other states. I hope there is someday, because a lot of things still don't make sense to me. But Ron DeSantis was trying to take care of his elderly population, and people were trying to create story after story because they see him as the next Trump, I guess. And they were mad at red governors anyway. But I think that's really the case. If Trump doesn't run, or if they primary each other, whatever, and he becomes like the next person, Trump will be there's always someone worse. They will say, he's even worse than Trump. That's what the media will say. He's even worse than Trump because he actually believes these things, or because he's more articulate, or because they'll find a reason why he's worse. They always say someone is worse. Because when Trump was around, like, well, Bush would never. And in a lot of cases, they are very different. So, but there's always someone they paint worse. And when that person is in charge, they're the worst thing you can imagine until the next Republican comes along. But man, they clearly hate him. But it seems like there's some political stuff going on. So they had the monoclonal antibodies that they were using in Florida for people. And then at the White House, they were like, well, there's too much going to Florida. We got to ration this stuff along and control how it goes along, because we got to make sure there's supply for other states. And they're like, but we're using it. We're using it right now. Like, well, other people's got to get it. So Florida tried to do their best to still accommodate their very elderly population who needs help. So now they're like pumping the brakes on this stuff. And so Jen Psaki was asked about it.
Secondly, the FDA yesterday withdrew the EUA for some monoclonal antibody treatments because they don't work against Omicron. But Florida continues to push for the treatment for people in the state. What's your response to Governor DeSantis, and what's your message to the people of Florida?
Well, let's just take a step back here just to realize how crazy this is a little bit. We've approached COVID treatments like filling a medicine cabinet. We're not relying on one type, one brand, or treatment. We invested in and continue to buy a variety across monoclonal antibodies, pre-exposure prevention therapies, and oral antivirals. We have provided 71,000 doses of antivirals to Florida, including 34,000 additional treatments that do work against Omicron just this last week. Of a range of those treatments, I should say, to be clear. What the FDA is making clear is that these treatments, the ones that they are fighting over, that the governor is fighting over, do not work against Omicron, and they have side effects. That is what the scientists are saying. We have sent them 71,000 doses of treatments that are effective against Omicron and are effective also against Delta. And they are still advocating for treatments that don't work. We've seen, unfortunately, from the beginning, in our pandemic response, a range of steps or pushes that have been made through social media platforms, unfortunately from the mouths of elected officials, and the advocating for things that don't work, even when we know things do work. Injecting disinfectant, promoting other pseudoscience, sowing doubt on the effectiveness of vaccines and boosters, and now promoting treatments that don't work. We know it works, vaccines and boosters. We have a range of doses of things that do work in treatments, and we're providing those to Florida. Go ahead.
Okay, they work in what way? and since we're not going by other variants anymore, we're just focused on this one, which there will be another one to come along, by the way. They're already talking about a new variant, so we're about to get to the point where we're kind of over this and engaging into another one, right? But if we're only talking about now what works with this variant, because that appears to be the reasoning behind the FDA saying that you can't use this stuff anymore. It doesn't stop you from spreading Omicron. It doesn't stop you from catching it. It's not, I mean, when people normally take vaccines, they expect that they're not going to have to deal with the virus. I saw a pretty funny TikTok my sister showed me the other day. There was this black guy sitting in his car, and he's like, to everybody who said who got the jab, and then they said, oh, well, now they're saying that you can just it'll protect you, and in case you get it, like it won't be as bad, instead of you not getting it at all. He's like, he just exploded. He's like, why can't y'all just say I was wrong? Why can't y'all just say I was wrong? And he just exploded. It was so funny. And people in the comments, there were people in the comments like, oh my gosh, no one said that you wouldn't get sick. No one, and she told me about it because I guess she kind of figured I might cover it or something. I might still do a TikTok reply or whatever to it, but I have done video replies to people and showed people Biden and showed people other people where they said, hey, you know what? I think I have this right here.
There's been over a 20-to-1 return.
If you had put that money into an S&P 500 and reinvested the dividends, you'd come up with something like $17 billion, but you think it's $200 billion.
Here, yeah.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
These vaccines are highly, highly effective.
Vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
They're really, really good against variants.
Everyone who takes the vaccine is not just protecting themselves, but reducing their transmission to other people and allowing society to get back to normal.
Get your first shot, and when you're due for your second, get your second shot.
Our key goal is to stop the transmission, to get the immunity levels up so that you get almost no infection going on whatsoever.
When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
If you're vaccinated, you're not going to be hospitalized, you're not going to be in an ICU unit, and you're not going to die.
Okay, so that's enough. It goes on, but you get the drift. So does it work or it doesn't work? Now they're saying, well, it's just supposed to make your symptoms less. That's what they say now. That's not what they promised it before. And we know Omicron, it's doing its thing. It's just, So, Jen, I'm a little confused. What counts as working and not working now? What counts as working and not working now? And so she also talked about people sowing doubts with a vaccine. Let's go back down memory lane. RNC cut this some time ago.
I think it's going to be a very skeptical American public about taking the vaccine, and they should be.
We can't trust the president and take his word and take a vaccine that might cause harm to us.
If and when the vaccine comes, and it's not likely to go through all the tests that needs to be and the trials that are needed to be done.
Let's just say there's a vaccine that is approved and even distributed before the election. Would you get it?
Well, I think that's going to be an issue for all of us.
When we finally do, God willing, get a vaccine, who's going to take the shot? Who's going to take the shot?
We will need to have access to the vaccine results so we can make our independent assessment to make sure that Donald Trump's fingerprints are not on it.
You can be the first one to say, sign me up. They now say it's okay.
Is the vaccine safe? Frankly, I'm not going to trust the federal government's opinion. And I wouldn't recommend to New Yorkers based on the federal government's opinion.
And the question of whether it's real when it's there, that requires enormous transparency.
Would you trust that vaccine?
There's very little that we can trust that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth.
We cannot take for granted this process will be free of political influence.
I don't trust the president, and I don't trust the FDA.
If Donald Trump can't give answers and the administration can't give answers to these three questions, the American people
should not have confidence. You're going to say to the American people now, here's a vaccine. It was new. It was done quickly. But trust this federal administration and their health administration that it's safe.
I will say that I would not trust Donald Trump.
Hey, how confident are you in the approval process of the FDA right now?
How confident am I? I'm not that confident.
Yes, I would be hesitant, but I'm going to ask a lot of questions.
You're going to need someone other than this FDA and this CDC saying it's safe. You got to make all of it available to other experts across the nation so they can look and see. So there's a consensus, this is a safe vaccine.
What I'm worried about is that there's some sort of October surprise and that there is a pressure put on the decision makers here to announce a vaccine in October of 2020.
We're going to put together our own group of doctors and medical experts to review the vaccine and the efficacy and the protocol. And if they say it's safe, then I'll go to the people of New York and I will say it's safe.
But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
So there you go. There you go, Jen. There's a list of people in high levels of power. One of them is what's that called? The President of the United States. And one of them is the Vice President of the United States. One of them is a former governor of New York. He got ousted for sexual assault, but I really think it's because of the nursing home scandal. But yeah, there you go. So if we're going to talk about people who, made people hesitant about the vaccine, do you know who didn't make people hesitant about the vaccine? From his words, Trump. He's still like, the vaccines are safe. People are mad at him because he keeps touting how safe it is. He's like, no one's died from it. People are mad. People are so mad. I see TikToks of people say, we can't trust this man anymore. For all the people who thought they were in a cult, by the way, Trumpers were in a cult. And there's plenty of people who have taken it, who voted for the man, who are Republicans, blood red Republicans, okay? People look at the options, the risks versus rewards, and they take them. It's as simple as that. If you think you should take it, you should take it. People who are bullying you into it, screw them. That's my opinion, okay? But Jen Psaki just pretending like her side wasn't the one sowing all the seeds of division, and they did that for politics. They would have hated if there was a light at the end of the tunnel when Trump was president, because it would have made people more optimistic and then made the difference for the election. That's why they were saying all these things about the vaccine. That's why they were sowing hesitancy in it. That was where the hesitancy was coming from, and they're encouraging people to not get it or to hold off on it. And they knew that they were going to push it eventually, and they wanted people to take it eventually. So that's why they're like, well, we just got to hold off, and we just got to look at it, and we got to do all these different things. That's what they were saying. So Jen Psaki is, of course, full of it. And then she mentioned disinfectant, because they go back to that press briefing when Trump was talking about an idea of using light as a disinfectant. And that was something that was being discussed, that was being looked at. Trump didn't just think up in the air this thing, and he definitely didn't mean inject bleach. And there's people in the media, I think Biden himself said that Trump said inject bleach, if I'm not mistaken. So this is what they pushed time and time again. And now she's comparing the disinfectant thing, which she thinks is crazy, or she's painting it crazy. I don't know if there's just that much unhinged behavior in her head, where there's so much confirmation bias that she literally thinks that Trump was like, hey, we got to inject ourselves with Lysol or something like that. I don't know if that's in her head, or she's just at this point just being dishonest. Dishonesty it could go either way. I think she's more likely just being dishonest and trying to frame that, and she knows there's enough unhinged people on her side who still think that. But she's comparing this thing that she's painting as clearly crazy to this treatment that people have been using, and whether maybe it's perhaps is not as effective or we'll say at this point of time, because the FDA has said it or whatever, we'll say it's not effective against this variant. Does that mean it's not going to be effective against the other variants that are coming down the line? Or does that mean that it's not going to be effective against the variants that other people have? Or that it wasn't effective in the past? And it's curious that they're like this with this treatment, or in a lot of other treatments. She said, well, there's a lot of other things that we've approved. Okay, but why was there so much frustration or pushback against hydroxychloroquine? There's a Democrat in Michigan. She heard Trump talk about it and she took it, and she attributes her life to that. And she was punished by her Democrat colleagues. What, for living? For surviving? For what? For complimenting the president? I've said this before. This is an episode of Dead Zone. This episode would have taken place early 2000s. And there was like a SARS-CoV type disease. And the cure was like chloroquine or something. So it's not because, if you watch it, it's really eerie. You can go watch it on YouTube, that clip. And I've played it before. It's very eerie. And it's not because the show Dead Zone, that's actually about a guy who could see into the future. It's not because they could actually see the future. They just did the research and knew there was so much research that they could predict that if there was an outbreak like this, that you would need this sort of thing and it would take care of the problem. And they said so many crazy things like, well, there are side effects. There's side effects to like everything. Like, well, they're saying it could hurt your heart. So at the same time they're saying, well, lupus patients need it. I'm like, what? They're so against it. And they were so mad at Joe Rogan and other people for ivermectin, and CNN painted it as horse dewormer, as if there's not a people version of the medicine. And it seemed they were so upset that him and Tim Pool and other people who used it survived. Shouldn't it be a good thing that people are living? I thought that's why everyone wanted people to get vaccinated. They wanted people to take these treatments. They wanted people to stay shut in and wear masks because they want people to live. Yet they're upset when they do, when they survive, but they didn't survive their way. They didn't survive with permission. That's the real problem, right? We're not surviving with your blessing, with your permission. That seems to be the real problem to me. So remember when people were saying if it could save one life? Do you remember that? Do you remember that? And they're like, well, it could cause side effects. There are side effects to the vaccine. People need to be allowed to take calculated risks. But they need to have the information. But just blocking it? And you can't say the FDA is not political. They've made some political decisions. So it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. Jen Psaki, she's the worst. So let's talk about this story. There's a man out of Boston who's removed from the heart transplant list because of his vaccination status. CBS Boston reported it. Fox News, T-Post Millennial, other people picked it up. I'm reading from T-Post Millennial right now. According to the man's family, DJ Ferguson was once on the list to receive a heart at the Bingham and Women's Hospital in Boston, but due to his vaccination status has been removed. It's kind of against his basic principles. He doesn't believe in it. It's a policy they are enforcing. So because he won't get the shot, they took him off the list of the heart transplant. David, father of DJ, told CBS, son has gone to the edge of death to stick to his guns, and he's about to be pushed to the limit. The hospital says that COVID-19 research shows that those who have had transplants were at a much higher risk of dying from COVID-19 compared to those without transplants. We do everything we can to ensure that a patient who receives a transplanted organ has the greatest chance of survival, a spokesperson told the New York Post. Our Mass General Bingham healthcare system requires several CDC recommended vaccines, including the COVID-19 vaccine, and lifestyle behaviors for transplant candidates to create both the best chance for a successful operation and to optimize the patient's survival after transplantation, given that their immune system is drastically suppressed. There was a story last year when the vaccines started really roll out, and then you started to hear bubblings of stories of people who had the vaccine and then they passed away. And there was a young Black woman in college who died suddenly, and people were saying it sounds like she died from, and there were stories that said no, she had a heart transplant and she died and it failed. It's like, but what ruined her heart prior to the transplant? So again, there are some, if you do get COVID after having a transplant, I'm assuming you're sick, you need the transplant. So you do have comorbidities, and if you have the vaccine and it has helped you survive or forget it, I understand that you're more likely to survive, but that doesn't mean you won't. It doesn't mean you won't, and it still might not necessarily for that patient be the best thing either. So this is so rough. And you know what? This isn't the first story. And Newsmax reported on another case in Virginia, maybe about a week or two ago.
Shamgar Connors from Stafford, Virginia. He has stage 5 kidney failure and is forced to be on dialysis every night. He's been on the kidney transplant list for 3 years, and he needs one soon to survive if he hopes to live. But now he is being told by the University of Virginia's Transplant Center that he is no longer eligible to receive a transplant because he is unvaccinated. He is considered, quote, inactive, meaning he couldn't get a kidney even if someone offered it to him. We have the exclusive phone call recorded by Shamgar and given to us. It's between him and a doctor at that transplant center. Listen.
Our policy is in order to have people active on the transplant list and get a transplant, you need to be fully vaccinated. So you don't want to move forward?
I'd rather die of kidney failure than get it.
Okay. So this may be a crossroads at your evaluation, because there's not going to be any exception to that. The science is pretty clear on the vaccine.
And I just had COVID and I got over it. I'm not scared of it. It doesn't matter. It's like you have a 99.99997% chance to survive. I'm not like requiring a vaccine. And
that's all pretty inaccurate data. But it's obviously your choice, but it's not your choice if you want to be active on the list.
She summed it up at the end. It's not your choice at all. I mean, it's unbelievable to listen to her there. You're at a crossroads. The man could die. Well, we called the UVA Transplant Center for comment twice. Once, we were told they would call us back. They never did. The second time, they hung up on my producers, who were all very well respected and respectful during that phone call. Well, Shamgar Connors joins me now to talk about his story. Shamgar, welcome to the program.
hey, thanks for having me, and thanks for getting this story out.
Well, I'm afraid you're probably not alone here. How concerned are you now? I mean, I guess, are you facing death in the eye?
Well, yeah, ultimately, I mean, my condition won't get any better. That's what I'm told by the doctor. So unless I get a kidney transplant, yeah, the only alternative is death. And I've already been on the wait list 3 years, maybe more than that, actually. And so now I'd have to start all over somewhere else. So most likely by the time kidney would come up, which is, for me, O positive blood, 6 or 7 years, what they tell me the wait time is, I might not be alive by then.
Oh, Shamgar, I'm so sorry.
Y'all gonna let a man die in a Vegeta shirt? Darn you all. I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, big fan. So he said he'd rather die And there's people who don't want to take it because of the pressure and the push of the government. They find at this point it's immoral to comply. I'm kind of there actually myself. A lot of this has been about control. You can't say like the mandates haven't made sense. I was glad the OSHA thing got struck down because it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. Barry Weiss talked about how you can go. People were talking about how you can go to a restaurant and you show your vaccine card, but you can be asymptomatic, sitting there with Omicron and spreading it all around. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But they were willing to let everybody be fired if they didn't comply. But they knew their people wanted to keep their jobs, so they go ahead and do it, even if they didn't want it. And the funny thing is that so many people, I showed you guys this graph yesterday, people who are vaccinated, people with a booster, are still the ones most concerned about getting sick and dying. Well, not dying, but getting sick from COVID within the next year. I don't know how severely they think getting sick, but at first people were saying if you have it, you'll be fine. You can go back to normal life. That was the pitch. That was the pitch. And now you have women like on The View who are angry that life isn't back to normal, and they blame everyone else, the people who've already gotten back to normal as far as they can. So this man here in Virginia, this man in Boston, they're not given really a choice. I mean, comply is a choice. But is it really much of a choice? Do what we say or die. It's not a moral choice. The people dishing it out. And he can decide to stick to his guns and not take it. And it could, and people have religious reasons too, as well. People don't like that fetal tissue cells from like abortion are used in like the testing of it. And I was researching some stuff the other day. Man, that stuff goes pretty deep. I don't want to talk about it on the show until I know more, but it goes outside pharmaceuticals, and it's a lot. Let's just say the abortion industry is super incentivized, I guess. There's a lot of things involved in it. So I don't know what all the reasons why these people feel so convinced to not take it. And there's a lot of people out there who didn't take it, but at the end of the day, they decided it was worth taking it to be able to go to a restaurant, to be able to go to school. And then they still have to go and get the booster, and it's not stopping. So I think there's more people upset because they're like, when is the end here? When is enough enough? How long are we going to have to keep getting boosters and tested and all this kind of... People don't know. You were vaccinated if you got the 2 shots before, or the one if you use I think the Johnson & Johnson was the 1 shot. Now you have to have the booster to get the fully protected. And they're talking about the 4th booster. In Israel, they're doing the 4th boosters. So people don't know where it stops. So I don't know if this is I don't like the force, I'm going to be petty till the end, or if it's some kind of religious reason. I don't know what's deep in their bones, what their conviction is. But you got to respect they obviously put the skin in the game. But the people who took them off the list, I think that's pretty sick and sad. And I saw someone in my comments say that, hey, no one owes them those things. This man, they said in that Newsmax video, the interview, that even if someone wanted to give him a kidney, they would not do that. Now, is that moral? Is that okay? There's someone wanted to give him a kidney, he still couldn't get it? That's messed up. That's egregious. And if you're cheering this kind of stuff on, I don't think you're on the right side of history. I do not think you're on the right side of history. Moving on, let's talk about Peter Dinklage. Now, Peter Dinklage, a lot of people know from Game of Thrones. Great actor. A lot of people know him from something else. First time I think I really can remember Peter in something. Elf. The movie Elf. So he said some comments lately that annoyed some people. Like he talked about Game of Thrones and the reaction that it got with the ending, and that the pretty white people were upset or something along those lines. I don't think the quote that he had was, people seemed really upset about the that quote. I don't know if it was warranted as much outrage as what people were saying when you listen to it all in the full context, but it was a little annoying, I guess. But he came for Disney because they plan on doing an adaptation of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. And so he was happy that they're using a Hispanic actress as Snow White, which we've talked about this on the show before. Why? It's just Snow White is skin as white as snow. That's the story. So why would she be Hispanic? Why? Now Disney can do whatever it wants to do, but this is one of their most iconic stories that they did. I mean, obviously they make all these stories that Disney does. It's an adaptation based off of something, including Encanto, that everyone's like going around singing a lot about, that we don't talk about Bruno, that all this stuff is based off something. So they didn't create Snow White, but Snow White was like something that Walt Disney like adored, loved, was trying to always recapture that sort of magic from Snow White. It was a very iconic movie at the time. So now they're doing the live action Disney. I like to think of the live action Disney as like not really, it's its own different thing, They changed a lot with the Snow White film, the Aladdin film. And they're just weird. They're just different. I'm not gonna get up all in arms about the Ariel thing. My sister was super mad about The Little Mermaid because that's one of her favorite movies. She loves Ariel, and she doesn't like the direction that it's going. And what I don't understand about that, there is a black actress who's playing Ariel. They don't even get the right red hair. It's a different like shade of red. It's not even like the iconic Ariel. I don't understand why they don't want to be loyal to their own material. That baffles me. Because they made Ariel a redhead like that because there was another film called Splash with Tom Hanks that came out around the same time. So they made their mermaid to be iconic. I have a book that I wrote about a mermaid, and I gave her blue hair because I didn't want people wanted to cosplay. I didn't want people to, there are some like Easter eggs, I guess you could say, that will remind you of like the original story of The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen and like the Disney one. But I still, if someone were to cosplay it, I didn't want someone to be wearing red hair or something and people were like, oh, that's like a cool, warrior Ariel. It's like, no, that's not who that's supposed to be. So I gave her blue hair. So Disney not being loyal to their own sort of thing is weird to me. But Snow White thing is super puzzling. It's super puzzling. So, Peter Dinklage was on a podcast and said, I was a little taken aback when they were very proud to cast a Latina actress as Snow White. You're still telling the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. Take a step back and look at what you're doing here. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, and you're still making that bleeping backwards story about 7 dwarves living in a cave together. What the bleep are you doing, man? Have I done nothing to advance the cause from my soapbox? I guess I'm not loud enough. Again, I want to point out the film where I first remember seeing Peter Dinklage in a movie called Elf. And the whole joke about him being in the film was that Will Ferrell's character thought he was an elf. And he kept saying stuff about him being small, and his character was offended and he ended up attacking him. That's why he's like running in here, because he's about to attack Will Ferrell, if I'm remembering the scene correctly. Will Ferrell's character was Buddy, and Buddy was actually from the North Pole. and he went to go stay with his father, find his real father, because he, I guess he really did think he was elf growing up, so he found his real father, and he went to work, and then he saw this. He was a renowned children's author, and when Buddy saw him, he was like, "You're very far from the North Pole," and so he's saying all these things that are offensive to Peter Dinklage's character, not knowing that he's not meaning to be offensive. He's just ignorant of the ways of the world. But that was the joke. That was a joke. And maybe from his perspective, he was standing up for himself, so that kind of scene is okay. And comedy is, you can laugh at things in comedy. At least that's how it used to be. At least that's how it used to be. I just think it's an interesting observation. I just think it's interesting. And once upon a time, they did handle Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, and that was on ABC, so still, technically Disney, but they weren't human. They were born from eggs, and they're all just like these mannish people who hatched from eggs, and they had these their magical axes, and they've mined for fairy dust, and when they got their axe, the magical axe gave them their name based on their personality or whatever. There was an episode called Dreamy, because Grumpy was actually dreamy at first, and he got his heart broken, and then he became grumpy. So they can do different things with it, and I guess Disney is. So after Peter Dinklage outraged, they did respond, and they said, to avoid reinforcing stereotypes from the original animated film, we are taking a different approach with these 7 characters and have been consulting with members of the dwarfism community. We look forward to sharing more as the film heads into production after a lengthy development period, a Disney spokesperson told The Hollywood Reporter. So, I mean, his soapbox worked, I guess. We'll see what Disney does. Maybe they won't be dwarves. Maybe it'll be clear that they're not human. Maybe they'll just change different things about the personalities. But the dwarves were very kind to Snow White in her moment of need. They were very heroic in the film. I mean, the prince gets a lot of credit for kissing her, but in waking her up, did true love's kiss and all that stuff. But they were very brave, courageous, and kind to her. So they're heroes of the story. So I don't think, I mean, and I'm not a dwarf, so I'm obviously coming from a different perspective, but just as someone who grew up, liking these animated films and being a fan of film, I just don't, they're the heroes of the story. They're the heroes of the story. And once upon a time, they brought Ursula on the show, and there are people upset because she was played by a skinny black woman as opposed to a fat black woman. And I was like, if the skinny girls want to be evil, then go ahead and be evil. I'm so like, I didn't take it too personal. I didn't feel like I didn't have representation because they didn't put a fat black person on screen. I'm like, hey, Ursula is one of the most like evil characters in Disney, in my opinion. So I'm like, you can rock that evil, you skinny heifer, you like. So I wasn't like hating on him or whatever. So I don't know what they'll do with the dwarves, and I don't know how much Disney's willing to change their iconic characters. But someone says Snow White and the 7 goats. So I don't know what they'll do, but we live in a very woke world. And it is puzzling to me, though, how Disney will try to be so sensitive about some of their stuff, but at the same time, they'll have something like Beyonce's Lion King music video like experience or something, where she made all this music video stuff associated with the Lion King called Black is King, which I thought was a curious title and contrast, because Kanye not too long ago had an album that was Jesus is King, and then she had an album that Black is King. I don't know. Maybe it means nothing. Maybe it doesn't. But there was one video she had when someone called Scar, and the lyrics were quite curious. Or like, in the jungle ain't no Bible and other kind of stuff, and it appeared like she had an actual demonic possession in it. I got into a big back and forth with someone, and they're like, thought I was overreacting, and that, I don't know, I guess we see stuff that's kind of like spiritual and just see it as demonic. And I'm like, Christians pretty much believe everything that's not Christian is demonic anyway. But they said ain't no Bible, and her eyes rolled to the back of her head. There was contortionist, and if you look at it, I thought it was interesting, and I thought it was interesting that it was on Disney Plus, and I thought it was interesting that they were advertising it so much. I don't pay for Disney Plus, and I probably would have ended my subscription when they started that. But that's just me. You guys are free to do whatever you want. Someone said I didn't know that dwarves hatch from eggs. I don't. That was in Once Upon a Time, the TV show. I don't know if that's something that they'll do in the films, or if that's I don't think it's probably part of any other lore. But it was interesting, at least in the show. So they weren't even like human beings. They're just like magical. It seemed like they're just magical men made to mine fairy dust, and that's what they did in the show. That was they had the magical pickaxes. They in the mines they collected fairy dust. They gave it to the fairies, and the fairies used it for magic. I don't know. So that's what the show did, and that's what they did on Once Upon a Time. So I don't know what they'll do. And even if they just decided to have them hatch from eggs and say, oh, it's okay, they're not human, I don't know if that would still be acceptable in the eyes of the woke crowd. But again, we're talking about people who were heroes of the story, who helped save the girl, who took care of the girl in need, at a time where there was an evil queen looking for her, who tried to have her killed, who sent a huntsman after her and stuff. And so Godspeed to the dwarves. They're good peoples, and I love the dwarves. I had a Snow White doll, and I had all the 7 dwarves, and they like reacted to water too. Like Doc, he had a diamond, and if it got wet, it would turn bright blue. I had a Dopey, and no, I think if there was a Bashful, and he would turn red. His cheeks would get all bashful. I had a Dopey. If he had kisses because she kissed him if you got him wet. That was a movie I liked. Like, I had pillowcases of Snow White. I would draw it. So it's just, I don't care a whole lot myself, because I'm not really that invested in Disney and stuff anymore. I don't really watch their stuff. I haven't even seen the last few Marvel movies, and I've talked a little bit before on the show, but I'm not going to rant about it today. But the live action stuff is just different, alternate reality thinking, in my opinion. They're not the same. So I think it's weird that they're doing a Snow White story, and it's not a white woman, it's a Hispanic woman, Latino woman. And I believe the same person who was in the West Side Story film, which I heard was good, but I didn't see it, and it really didn't get a lot of like advertisement. But I just think it was something different. But just some interesting commentary. It was really trending, and obviously he was able to make his impression at Disney. But I think it's interesting that when conservatives bark, they can't sway Disney, but other people can sway Disney. I'll just leave it at that. And so that is the show for today. I want to thank you guys for joining in. Please make sure you go to blacktnews.com, check out different content out of the site. Again, I did drop an article today about abortion. I do want to thank, again, our gold sponsor, the Michigan Conservative Coalition, for donating to the March for Life movement when I went there this past weekend. And I had such a great time there, seeing so many young people who were the pro-life generation. So I appreciate them and everyone who did give a donation during that time, and I will be putting everything together for like a big video for it. So I'll be showing that to you soon enough. But I do really appreciate everyone who did donate. If you would like to help support Black Teen News, you can go to blackteennews.com/donate. If you appreciate what I do here and you would like to help this channel, this website grow, there are ways that you can help do that. So please go to blackteennews.com/donate. You guys can also check out different merchandise that I have on the store as well, like my awesome goat hoodie. This is what I kept warm during the march. And I do have those in different colors, in black and pink and dark blue and so on, because people are like, I'll get that dirty. And I understand. So I do have those in different colors. You can check that out. I have these, I voted for President Trump and all I got was historic peace stills. Gas was low, all the tax cuts, etc., and this lousy t-shirt. So you guys can check that out. Also, the I Am Not the Victim You're Looking For. That's a great shirt you guys can get as well. I actually did make that after the Gina Carano situation when she was fired from Disney and then she got picked up from the Daily Wire. So you guys can check out that shirt as well. It's a really cool shirt. Thank you guys for joining me today. Make sure you guys are following me on all my social media platforms, and I will see you guys tomorrow.